Hi, hello, and welcome again. I wanted to address some issues from the comments of the viewers, questions asked. A brief outlook of a very simple schematic, the most simplest schematic you could come up with. Obviously, from the textbook that's obviously that I used in school over 25 years ago. So now let's start with the basics because there was confusion. And then you understand where I'm trying to get to. Now, this is the battery voltage in your car. We all know the symbol, and we all know it's the fuse. We all know this is a switch. And we all know, let's say this is a bulb and ground. So, the most basic symbols are used. This is from 25 years ago, still used today. So, the question was, this textbook, is it outdated because it's 25 years ago? Question number one. Question number two from the viewer about opens and shorts. Still confusion about an open, where an open is or where a short is, and about fuses. So let's try to address as much of those issues as we can in the video. First of all, a battery voltage. We all know 12 volts. We all know this, okay? Which is the positive, which is the negative. This longer one is the positive. The shorter one is the negative. Negative is to ground. Could be the engine block, could be anything, chassis ground, metal ground. That's ground. Now, this is a fuse, a symbol of a fuse. So, as you see over here, in the most basic of diagrams, there is no fuse rating. As you can see over here, these are not labeled what these symbols are. On a schematic, on the actual schematic, you will have it. As we have done before, the actual schematic, as you can see, the fuse rating is there. And it labels and it tells you the fuse, what the symbol represents, which is good. But in this textbook, and this is the foundation, it doesn't mention it. But it's a good thing it doesn't, because now we can put in our variables. So, a fuse. What's the rating going to be of the fuse? If this is a light bulb, will this be 30 amps, 40 amps? Will it be 7 amps? Will it be 5 amps? Chances are, if it's a light bulb, a headlamp, tail light, doesn't matter what, fog light, reverse light, it's going to be pretty low. So let's say 5 amps to 7 amps. 5 amps to 7 amps, let's say. A switch, this is in a normally closed position in this one. Once we have the variables of this switch is closed. When you close the switch in your car, what are you doing? You're allowing the lights to be turned on. Now, as far as voltage is concerned, not current, how much would I expect this to be? Regardless of the fuse rating. That's the main point. This will be 12 volts. Why? Because this wire is connected always to this battery. How do we define this? Hot at all times. Why? Regardless of what happens in this circuit, regardless if this fuse is open or not, this terminal of this fuse is always connected to the positive of the battery, and it'll always be hot at all times. Let's look at the schematic again. Hot at all times. Here's the fuse. This is always connected to the battery. No switch involved. That's why it's hot at all times. Now, that's before the fuse. After the fuse, how much should I get? 12 volts. Okay? Doesn't matter the rating of the fuse. 30 amps, 40 amps, 7 amps. 12, 12. The switch, how much should I get from this wire to this wire? And it's the same wire. How much should I get from here to here? 12 volts over here. How much should I get after the switch? Close. Remember, it's closed. If it's open, it'll be 0 volts here. It's not connected to the battery. So this will be 12 volts. How much should I get from this wire of the point to this wire at this point? Same thing. It's just a wire, 12 volts. How much should I get over here? 0 volts. So, so far, I haven't told you anything new. You've known this already. So, I'm going into your mindset and thought provoking and asking the questions that you're asking yourself. So in other words, I'm asking the questions that you're asking right now. What reason do I have to watch such a video? I knew all this. Okay? So let's go into it. The viewer asks, opens the shorts. This is called the series circuit. I put an open over here. This wire broke. We represent it by an X. Will it blow the fuse? If you said yes, you're wrong. No current can flow. The number one rule is current has to flow through the whole circuit, back to ground, back to the battery. If it started here, remember, conventional current, electron current, doesn't matter. If the current flows here, it has to come back to the battery. Do I have that option if there's an open here? Remember, there's a break. No, I do not have that option. Current cannot flow. It cannot flow. So therefore, as I look for the eraser, let's take this out. Okay? Now, would it make a difference if I put the break here for that viewer with the comment? I think his name was Eric. The break is here now, not here. Will this blow the fuse? No. Why? Because there's no current flowing. You mean again, current cannot flow? Nope. It needs a complete path. So let's take this one out. This is similar to having the switch open. Now, let's take this one and put it open here. Will current be able to flow? Remember, I said 7 amps to this bulb. Will 7 amps flow if there's an open here? If you said no, you're correct. Will 5 amps flow? No. Will 2 amps flow? No. Will 1 amp flow? No. Why? Doesn't matter how much amps. It needs a complete path from here into the bulb, out of the bulb to ground, back to ground. Doesn't matter. So therefore, as of now, the fuse never blew. Never blew. We're going to make this a little complicated. Now, we're going to put a short across this one over here. Across this wire. Is this a short to ground? Or is this just a short? Guess what? It's not a short to ground. What would a short to ground be? A short from here to ground. A short from here to ground. A short from here to ground. Would that blow the fuse? Definitely 100% yes. It should. Right? Regardless of the rating of the fuse. You have a dead short to ground. Now, I put a wire over here across this. I put a short across it. Will it change the the circuit? No. What's a wire? A wire is a short. A wire is a conductor with 0 ohms. What is the short across it? Another wire. So I'm putting a short across a short. Will not change it. This will not blow the fuse. All I'm doing is I'm shorting another wire. Now, I take this out. Let's take this out. And then we're going to get the fuses, and then you'll see the point that I'm trying to make. Now, take this short, and I put it where? Across here. Where? To ground. Right across here. This is a wire. This bulb is here. What am I doing now? I'm bypassing this bulb. When I'm doing that, what am I doing? I'm giving him a path of low resistance to ground. That's what current wants. It doesn't want, even if this is 7 ohms, 8 ohms, because of the filament. How much is this? Is 0 ohms. This is 0 ohms. You know what the current says? I like this path better. I don't like this. This is 7 ohms, 8 ohms. Current always takes the path of the least amount of resistance. This is no better than, you can't get better than this, than 0 ohms right to ground. Will the fuse blow? Certainly should, right? Think of it as this way. I always explain it in this manner so that you can visualize it, because electronics is so hard to understand because people can't visualize it. This is not brakes or rotors or power steering reservoir where you see leaks, you see bad pads or rotors or things like that. This is not like that. Electronics is different. So here we have a short. If you're driving, I have 2 highways to take. There's traffic here, represented by resistance. There is absolutely no traffic on this highway. Which highway are you going to take? You better believe you're going to take this highway because there's no traffic. Why? So that you can get to your destination much quicker. Let's take that to degree of current, electron flow. The current comes here, whatever, or it comes over here, whatever, electron flow, doesn't matter. And it says, okay, resistance here, no resistance. Hey, I'll get to my point much quicker by going this way. Okay? Now, let's take that a little further to this one that I did yesterday. That one was a bad circuit. Why? Because if I would have 10 light bulbs in that one, they would all go bad. What do? We put everything in parallel. Again, over here in the textbook, no fuse rating. Nothing is, it's not even said that this is a bulb. It's not even specified. But let's go one step further for Eric, who had the questions. Let's say I have an open here, represented by an X over here. Which bulbs will light, which bulbs will not light? Let's say these are the bulbs in your cars, right? Let's say these are all the headlamps, the parking lamps, represented by these. You come to your car, you look in the back, and you see, oh boy. Let's say a signal indicator is out, right? You change the bulb, right? You change the bulb saying, well, all the other ones are good, so it must be the bulb. You change the bulb, whatever it is, $5, $7, whatever it is. Nope, didn't do the problem. You look at the other bulbs in your car. You say they're good. But later on, you find out, you know what? There's a break in the line, in the connector. One connector, one wire of the connector, other side of the connector goes to ground. Remember, a connector has 2 wires. One with the positive, which is the B+, and the other one back to ground. Which one broke? The one with the positive. How did you find it out? By going to the positive, you put your probe and you measured a voltmeter, you took 12 volts, no 12 volts. But you found out to this one. The fact that this comes on means that there is 12 volts here, 12 volts here, 12 volts here, but I lost it between here and here. Why? Let me go over that again. I don't have 12 volts over here when I go to the connector. But I have a schematic, and the schematic tells me, or I look at the lights, this is lit, this is lit, this is lit. Do I have 12 volts? Yes. How do you know? Because they're all lit. This is not lit. That must tell me there's 12 volts in the line. If all of these are not lit, then I'll question the matter. I'm missing 12 volts on the line somehow. Maybe the fuse, maybe the switch. Okay? Now, so we take this out of the equation. We take this open. This is the only one that won't light. The other one's light. I put a break over here represented by an X. Which lights will light? Which lights will not light? Okay? Think of it. Think of this example. Will this light light? We just made a comment 14 minutes ago or so. I started a comment saying current has to have a complete path for it to go. Is this intact? Yes, the fuse is good. Is this closed, the switch? Yes, it is. If it is, I should have current flowing, right? But all the bulbs are out. What does that tell you? That tells me the break might be here. This switch might be defective or open, or this might be blown. Okay? But all of these will be affected depending where the open is. Let's take that out again. I have an open here. Now in the ground wire. So when I look at the bulb and I take out the connector, how many wires will be in that connector? The same as this, as the same as this, and the same as this. One connector will go to where? 12 volts. Well, not one connector. One wire of the connector will go to 12 volts. The other wire will go where? To ground. This opened up, represented by an X. Which will light, which will not light? Well, these will light. This one will light, and this one. Why? Why will those light and these not? Because there's still a current path for this one to go back to where? The battery. Still a current path for this one. Still a current back to this one. The only branch that will be affected is this one. Whether there's a break here, whether there's a break on the 12 volt line or on the ground, this branch is affected by it. Yes, affected by it. Okay, that's the difference. Depending where the break is, it'll affect different ones. Let's take one more example. So the viewer is probably saying to himself, Joseph, you're confusing me. You really are confusing me. No, the textbook is confusing you, not me. Right? Let's understand the foundation. I put a X here, broken wire here. Which will light, which will not light. Let's say this is a fuel pump. There's another fuel pump. Let's say it's a starter motor. Let's say this is your power window. Right? What will be good and what will be bad? Right away, is there a path to this to light for your fuel pump? Let's say it's a fuel pump. Yes, your fuel pump should go on. Why? Because the brake is not here. Let's say this is your starter motor. Will the starter motor go on? No. Why? Because the current has to go through here to get to here, and there's a break here. Oh, okay. What about your power window? Will that be effective? Yes. Why? Because current still has to go through this to get to this. Whether it's electron flow, where it's conventional flow, current still has to go from negative back to positive or positive back. Still, the line is affected. What about power doors? The switch for your power doors, let's say. This is the motor, right? And the motor is not, when you go to the power doors, doesn't turn on. Why? The brake is here. It affected all of these branches. This one is before it. It does not affect it. This was after, anything after the brake will be affected. Let's take this a little step further. Now, I opened up the video and I said this is outdated. By a viewer who said this textbook is 25 years ago in school and it's been outdated. And all of you are asking me the question, what is it called? It's called Automotive Technology, a Systems Approach. From Lincoln Tech, the school that I went to. So, now, let's delve a little harder into this. Okay? No fuse rating here, no fuse rating here. This is the problem. Now, let's say we have fuses here in a real schematic. The fuses measure 5 amps, 10 amps, or over here, 80 amps, over here, going to a motor. Let's use this over here. If we were to rate this fuse, what fuse rating will we put? It depends where the fuse is. This will measure what? The total circuit current. That's the main point. Main current. Main current. If there is 8 amps in here, 2 amps here, 2 amps here, 2 amps here, 2 amps here. Let's say I put a fuse instead of there. I will put a fuse right here. How much will I measure? Will I measure 8 amps a total? No, you'll measure 2 amps, 2 amps, 2 amps. You put a fuse here, or I put a fuse here. 2 amps and 2 amps. Will this be the total circuit current? No. This is the total circuit current. Brings us to another point. Now, I always like to give real illustrations of things that happen. So therefore, let's say over here, you go and I asked the question about fuses, right? And let me continue this on the next video because I'm running a little more, running a little 20 minutes, and it's pretty long. So let me start another video about that we continue saying. See you in the next video.